Hey everybody, and welcome back to Deserts of Plenty. My name is Ralph. Um, when I one of the degrees I have is in immunology, and one of the things I loved about studying science is that I was asked questions that I didn't even know that should be asked. You know, um, for example, in the fall, leaves on maple trees turn gold or red. Why is that? And never really thought about it. I just assumed they were dying, but that's not true. You take a leaf off a tree, maple leaf off a tree, and it'll stay green. So there's something going on there that I never even thought to ask about. Or, the average body temperature of a human being has dropped 1 degree Fahrenheit over the last century. What? Why? You even think to ask these questions. So these unknown unknowns. And I've talked about them before. And what I like about unknown unknowns is that you start thinking about all the things that you don't even know, right? Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know even to ask these questions. And now that I know there's these things that I don't know, it expands your mind because you start thinking about other things that you don't know that you don't know. And then you start thinking about the things you don't know about yourself, the things you don't know that you don't know about yourself, like why certain people trigger you in certain ways or certain situations get you angry or fearful or whatever. So I think I like this. I like unknown unknowns very much. And today I want to talk about a specific one, and that is why is sugar sweet? It's like, again, like, oh, I never even really, I don't know about you, but I never even thought about that question. Why is sugar sweet? Well, because it's sugar. Duh. I don't know. I never even thought about it. But of course, like, I don't like to get into false dichotomies, although I can only think of two reasons for why sugar is sweet. A, there's like an inherent quality in that sugar molecules that make them sweet to us. Or human beings have evolved to find it sweet, right? It's not a property of the thing. We have, the same way. It's almost like a subjective thing. We have come to find it sweet because doing so gives us an advantage, through evolution, a survival advantage. So if you think about it from an evolutionary angle like that, if you think back to like proto humans, our ancestors, whether they were human beings or even back to other kind of hominids, if you have a tribe of these people or individuals, I guess they're not people specifically or literally, and some of them find sugar very sweet and some of them find it less sweet. Well, who has an advantage? Well, because sugar is so dense in terms of its energy, those who find it sweeter, who will eat more or hoard more of it and keep it to themselves, they have advantages because they will get more nutrition, not more nutrition, they'll get more calories, and that will help them live longer. And so over generations, this preference for sweetness becomes selected for, and eventually, all individuals are descended from those individuals that found it sweet. And that's how how evolution works, right? There's an advantage of having some trait, and those who have that trait, i.e., find sugar sweet, they are selected for, and they prosper, and they pass on their genes, and then those offspring do the same thing, and over time, that desire for sweet things becomes even more ingrained. It's interesting. Glucose, which is the main sort of body fuel, I guess, it's that we don't find that very sweet, and that might be that because glucose is not found free in nature. It's usually bound up in starches and in other fiber is another one too. But we find fructose very sweet, and sucrose, which is a combination of fructose and glucose, we also find very sweet. Um, yeah, so it's interesting. Like sugar is sweet, not because it's inherently sweet, but because we have evolved to find it sweet because or at least, I mean, they can't prove that, right? But that's my working theory. And the same thing with, if you think about cooked food, right? At some point in our distant past, proto-humans, early hominids were able to control fire, and then they started cooking meat. And when you cook your food, not just meat, but cook some food, it makes it easier to get the calories out of them. So, human beings they had fire, they cooked their food, and then they could get more energy from them, or from the food. So we didn't have to have these, like, elaborate guts, like a long intestines, or chew our food all day long like other animals do. And this gave us an advantage. So we had more calories, so we could grow bigger brains. And it's this dance of evolution and technology. Human beings create a technology, in this case, fire, cooking, and then that shapes us in return. And it's the dance of evolution and how it works with us and our environment. So, many human preferences may not be inherent in the thing themselves. It may be because evolution, those of us who found those things to be a certain way, evolution favored them. And then that trait became ingrained in us and is now hardwired in us. There's this, and I certainly had this before I studied it in school, this idea that evolution is not directed by a mastermind, but that it is about creating more complex life. And in general, that's true. The early life on Earth was in general, much simpler than today. But, human beings also, we lose the individual to do the ability to do certain things. Like, we used to be able to, or at least ancestors of humans could make vitamin C, but at some point we lost that, presumably because we were getting it in our diet and we didn't need to make it. So when, a human ancestor lost the ability to make vitamin C, uh, that was an advantage because, oh, that's metabolically something it doesn't have to make, so it saves energy. And then eventually now all human beings are descended from that individual or those individuals that lost the ability to make vitamin C, which is very interesting. So for me, just expanding on this, like, why is sugar sweet thing, like, what came first, the molecule or our desire for it? I think about this in, like, a broader context. For example, like, when I wake up in the morning and I feel anxious, or sometimes I feel dread, or I'm in a low mood. And it used to be that, well, I would think, well, what's causing my low mood? And I would find a cause for it. And now I'm much more in the belief that, well, I have the mood predates, the mood comes first. So it's not like, oh, something happened that I can't quite figure out, and that's caused me to be depressed or anxious. No, I feel depressed or anxious, and now I'm looking for something to apply it to. And so this helps me because, if I'm in a bad mood or a low mood or depressed, I just like, oh, I'm just going to wait. I'm just going to wait it out and see if it is something that's really going on or not. And generally what happens is, by the afternoon, whatever feeling I had in the morning is gone. I say, oh, right. It wasn't something causing my low mood. I had a low mood and I was looking around for something to blame it on. And even going further, taking that even further, I think about, like, where do things begin, or what is the starting point of something? So if you think about cheating, right, in a relationship, that act, the cheating act I mean, it could be a spontaneous thing, or it could be the culmination of a lot of events that came before that. Much like the butterfly effect, where a butterfly flaps its wings somewhere in Asia, and then 6 months later you have a hurricane in the Atlantic Ocean, and one was the cause of the other. But the chain of events started something small way back in the past, and then ultimately it arrived. And when I think about my own relationships and, events that ended those, well, where did the end of that relationship start? What was the seed that grew into this relationship ultimately coming apart? Or was there one? Maybe it was always destined to end when it ended anyway. I think it's a useful lens to look, back into the past of things, look for the causes, what came first, and not assume that, oh, this thing happened, it's put me in a bad mood, let's go fix that, and they'll take care of it. But if I can't, I gotta stay in a bad mood. It's just more of a holistic, stepping back way to look at things. And then finally, politics is the same way. I know that many people dislike Donald Trump. Many people like him or love him, admire him. And for me personally, I'm not a fan, um, and that's cool. But the people who don't like him, a lot of my friends see him as like he's the problem. Once he's gone, everything will go back to quote unquote normal. Now, I don't see it that way. I see that Donald Trump is not like the cause of things. He's the ultimate outcome of a system that, had some problems before he arrived. Like he's just inevitable. In history, there's the great person theory, right? That great people come along and they do things and that changes history. And me, I'm much more of the people arrive and do things when we're ready for them. I think if Mark Zuckerberg had never existed, we would have Facebook now or something very much like it. It probably wouldn't be called Facebook. It might be slightly different, but but social media, I think, was inevitable, right? I think, if Einstein didn't exist, as smart and as capable as he was, by now, we'd know E equals MC squared. Like that was just waiting there to be discovered by somebody. He was the first. He gets credited for it, but, if I think if Einstein had lived 100 years earlier, he probably still would have been a great person, but he would have come up with different things because he's working on standing on the shoulders of giants. So I think it's an interesting thing to step back and look at, well, what came first, and why do these things happen? And because to me, the pleasing thing about it is that I it gives me more of a perspective and a less of a rush to judgment, and I feel much more positive about things than if I have to, oh, there's the cause and that's the thing and I know what's going on and I gotta fix it. It's like I just take my hands off the wheel and just think about all of the stuff happening. Anyway, thinking this way helps me make sense of emotional swings in my life events, and that, feelings often arise without clear causes. And to me, anyway, that's the way I think about it. And these causes are sometimes stories that we attach afterward. And I encourage us to look at the options, the origins of these things, not just the outcomes. Anyway, that's my time. Thank you all very much. And I hope you have a pleasant rest of your week. Bye.